Hello, Kellogg future class of 2021 and 2022. I'm Carter Cass and I teach entrepreneurship at Kellogg, but I'm also a Kellogg graduate class of 1992. So congratulations on getting in here. It says so much about who you are. It says that you're smart, it says that you're motivated, and it says that you're really collaborative and team-oriented, which we place a huge emphasis on at Kellogg, because we've learned over time those are career differentiators, the ability to collaborate and work well as a team. So I'm not going to give you the hard sell today on why you should consider coming to Kellogg, although I really could, being a graduate of this place and feeling like it helped me tremendously in my career. And also, I met 2 of my 4 groomsmen at Kellogg. So you'll meet wonderful people here. I'm going to talk to you about something that's near and dear to your heart, your career. This is 3 things that I wish I knew in 1991 when I was 28 years old and just coming into Kellogg. Here's 3 things I wish I knew then that I know now. These are 3 things that I wish I knew when she was 2 and he was -4. So I probably get, I don't know, 10 students a week come into my office wanting to talk about career. And over 10 years, that's about nearly 4,000 conversations I've had with students. So I usually get some question like this: Professor Cass, should I take this startup offer, or do you think I should go join McKinsey? So these are hard questions. How do you think through that? I hope I will help you think about that as we proceed today. So many times you'll hear people talk to you about purpose. It all starts with your purpose. But what if you don't know your purpose? What if it's as mysterious to you as Kim Kardashian's fame? What do you do then? Well, I would argue that purpose emerges over time, so don't worry too much about it right now. The most important thing you can do right now is get good at something, and then that will allow you to have leverage over the decisions you make and the negotiations that you have. Let me give you an example of someone who didn't know what their purpose was, and it emerged over time. So this person started off in academics, believe it or not, in cognitive sciences and symbolic systems. He didn't like that. So he went to Apple to do user experience and user interaction, and found out doing UX UI work that all the action was on the product management side. But he couldn't get into a PM job at Apple because he didn't have that background. So he made a lateral move to Fujitsu, where he was able to get a PM job. But as he was there, he realized that he had an entrepreneurial itch. So he started up his own company called socialnet.com, which was an early Match.com, eHarmony.com, Tinder type site that was before its time, and it went belly up. He licked his wounds, and then he joined PayPal as VP of Business Development. There he got to know the PayPal Mafia, Peter Thiel, all of that group of successful entrepreneurs. Those interactions with those people allowed him to finally realize his dream, becoming the founder of LinkedIn. Of course, this is Reid Hoffman. So let me just read you what Reid said. He said, if you look at a person's career, there's always a stroke of luck, but there's always a breakout job. That is a project, a connection that leads to rapid career growth. So what was Reid's key job that moved him in a different direction? It was this job at PayPal, I would argue, that got him interacting with entrepreneurs and gave him the courage and the network to do his own entrepreneurial venture, which was LinkedIn. So notice this path that he went through. He started off in academics, then he was a UX UI person, then he was a PM, he didn't like that, started a company, it failed, went to a more traditional job, and then boom, he tried entrepreneurship again. So he didn't know his purpose right off the bat. He thought he was going to be an academic. So my point in using this illustration is, if you don't know what you want to do right now, that is okay. What's important, and this is Cal Newport's philosophy from a book he wrote called So Good They Can't Ignore You. He said that what's important is to get good at something, and he calls it your craftsman's mindset. You get good at a series of activities, you gain a skill, and then once you have that skill, you can leverage it to get the terms you want, the job you want, the lifestyle you want. So Cal wrote this book when he was deciding if he wanted to be an academician or not. So he took off a year and interviewed people who were happy in their jobs, and he felt they found their purpose. And when he interviewed them, he found that very few of them knew what they wanted to do when they started their career, that they focused on getting good at something. And by getting good at something, then they could leverage that career capital into the context they wanted. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you're good at something. You can say, look, I'd like to work half-time. Or you could say, I'd like to work from home, or I'd like to work there 3 days a week. Sometimes that career capital allows you the flexibility you want in your job. So job one is to get good at something. And if you get good at something, you'll have leverage, and you can sort of feel your way into a set of circumstances that feel more like your purpose. So don't worry if you don't have it right off the bat. Here are two books that will help you do this. The left book is by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. They are IDEO partners, and this book is called Designing Your Life. It's using prototyping and design thinking methodologies to try and test things and see if they resonate, whether it's a new startup idea or if it's prototyping your next career move. The book on the right is called Little Bets by Peter Sims. This book, he advocates having these little bets, coming up with little bets and then testing them and seeing if they work. So for example, let's say you want to do little bets in your career. Maybe you are a contractor for a period of time. Maybe you're a consultant. Maybe you work free of charge for a period of time to see if you like something. Maybe you volunteer to be on a task force. Maybe you join a board of advisors. At one time, 10 years ago, when I didn't know what I wanted to do, I had 7 different little bet jobs simultaneously. I was doing all kinds of different things, and the things that I liked doing, I spent more time on, and the things that I didn't like doing, I dismissed over time. So this philosophy of little bets and testing and prototyping career options will allow you to learn quickly what's for you and what's not for you. So don't worry so much if you don't have your purpose. It will come over time as you test and learn what you like to do. And then when you become skilled, you can leverage those skills into the job context that you want. Okay, what is the second thing that I know now that I wish I knew when I was at Kellogg and I was 28 years old in 1990? The second thing, every business has a critical path, I learned. And are you working on a critical path function? So what do I mean by that? The critical path is the key sets of activities that drive sales and drive customer experience inside of a company. So depending on the type of company and the industry, the critical path can vary. But generally speaking, the critical path is often found in make, move, or sell jobs. Make jobs like manufacturing and product development, move jobs like supply chain operations, and sell jobs like enterprise sales and marketing. So what's important here when you are looking at joining a company, you want to make sure that you're going into a job that is on the critical path of that company, because those functions and those jobs are funded more. When there are layoffs, they're cut at the very, they're the last ones cut. And generally, general managers come from those functions. So how do you know if you're joining a company in a critical path function? I'd argue you can ask 4 questions or look at 4 areas to figure that out, okay? First of all, where do the general managers come from at that company? What functions do they come from? Secondly, which functions get funded the most? And when there's cuts, they get cut last. Third, follow the money. Which jobs are always investment spent? When they want to spend some more money, which jobs do they put more money into? R&D, sales, marketing, what is it? Last, look at the metrics that matter. When you look at the metrics that matter at the company, what functions are those metrics housed in? For example, if you're in retail, the metrics that matter are often around inventory management, sales growth, and margin expansion. Those are all oriented around the merchandising function. So merchandising is a critical path job. As a matter of fact, let me show you this in action. This is Walmart's critical path. There's 4 key areas that are on the critical path at Walmart, in my opinion, having worked there 7 years. Sourcing, where you have supplier negotiation, getting the lowest possible cost for the product. Merchandising, assortment planning, making sure you're in stock. Operations and logistics, like warehouse management, inbound and outbound freight. And store operations, running the stores effectively, visually merchandising the stores well, and managing the 600 people that are inside of a supercenter. So these are the 4 critical path functions at Walmart. If you look at where the last 3 or 4 CEOs have come from, Doug McMillon came from merchandising, Lee Scott came from operations, Mike Duke came from operations. Generally, and the last person before that came from store ops. They generally come from one of these 4 functions. In 2003, I was the CMO at Walmart.com, and I was in my performance review with my boss, John. John said to me as part of at the end of the review, he said, "Hey, would you ever like my job? Would you ever like to be the CEO of Walmart.com?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "You're not going to get it." I said, "What?" He said, "You're not going to get it, Carter, because at Walmart, marketing is not a critical path function. Critical path functions at Walmart are operations and merchandising. So if you want my job, you're going to have to take a lateral move into one of those areas." I said, "Okay." I asked if he'd rotate me into merchandising. He did so. I did that for a couple of years, and then I ended up getting his job as the CEO. But I couldn't have gotten that position because at Walmart, marketing wasn't a critical path function into general management. Now, at PepsiCo, where I worked 11 years, marketing is a critical path function. Roger Enrico, who is the chairman and CEO of PepsiCo, came from marketing. So it just depends on the company, but you want to find out when you're joining the company, is this a critical path function if you're interested in general management? Okay, third point. Should you slide down the brontosaurus? Now that's completely self-explanatory, so I can probably go on to the 4th point, right? I'm just kidding. What is that? What do I mean by should you slide down the brontosaurus? So most people, when they're looking at their jobs and they're looking at making a decision, they think about what industry they should go into and what job type, marketing, sales, etc. Don't forget to think really hard about stage of company. So here is the brontosaurus's back. You can see that going down like this. So I broke out a company. In the x-axis, you have time, and on the y-axis, you have company size. So you can see this first time is the incubation phase. This is where you're just starting a company. The founder has found a problem that's worth solving, created a solution, and is getting ready to roll that out into the market. That's the incubate stage. Is that where you want to play, like a true founder? Or maybe you want to be in the startup phase, where you're launching the product. You're trying to generate momentum. You're trying to get new accounts, new customers. You're hiring people. You're raising more money. Do you like that phase? What about the scale phase, where you're actually trying to operationalize the company more effectively? What about the growth phase, where you're trying to figure out how to continue to grow rapidly, new markets, new products, etc.? Or maybe the mature phase, where you're figuring out how to reinvigorate growth and you're working on cost containment a lot. So which phase is for you? What I did to try to help you is I laid out those 5 phases with key skills and traits that you might want to consider getting that I think are needed in these various phases. So for example, in the incubate stage, you have to think about what market insight do you have that's going to lead to an idea, a problem that's worth solving. You have to be very comfortable with ambiguity because you're creating the new, and you have to have tremendous resilience and perseverance because you're constantly said no to. Maybe you like the startup phase, the second phase, where it's about product development. It's about establishing culture. You have to have tremendous selling skills to raise money and to get people hired. What about the scale phase? You have to have strong operational capabilities around process, right? And product design. You have to be really good at communicating because now you have a lot of people at the company and you have to continue to be able to raise capital. Maybe it's the growth phase. Now you're really getting bigger. You have to work on what's Act 2. What are the new products you're going to innovate around? What new markets should you be looking at? You have to have a strong strategic planning process at this phase. Or mature phase, where you're leading innovation in a complex organization. You have to have strong functional skills, and you have to figure out how to be organizationally savvy to get traction for your ideas in a complex web of constituencies. Which phase is for you? I highlighted in yellow here some of the key considerations for each one of these phases. Where do you want to play given your personality and given your skills and your personality traits? I found that here's what I started off thinking, that I would play up in the mature phase. Then I went down into the scale phase at Electronic Arts. So I went from a company at PepsiCo was 50 billion down to a $600 million company. Then I took a flyer and went and started a company with a couple of people that ended up being called Blue Nile. It was selling diamonds to men, diamond engagement rings over the internet, direct to consumer. And we ended up taking that public. And what I realized is the best phase for me was startup and scale, those middle phases. I didn't have the comfort with ambiguity to be at the incubate stage. And I had challenges managing up when I was in the mature phase that I didn't enjoy that as much. I found that this middle phase where you're rapidly scaling and working on product development were the places that I was happy. So where should you play? When you think about your career decision, when I counsel students, I often talk about 4 factors. First of all, what function is right for you that fits your natural talents? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it operations? Is it finance? Where is it? Secondly, what industry interests you? I always counsel students, go with the growth. I would go to industries where there's a lot of natural growth. You have tailwinds, not headwinds. There's some sort of market disruption, probably technologically oriented. It could be some macro trend, societal macro trend too, and ride that growth trend. Because when companies are growing, your opportunities for advancement are much greater. Third, what stage is right for you? What we just talked about. Growth stage, scale stage, incubate and launch stage, startup phase, mature phase. Lastly, don't forget culture. Given your personality characteristics, what culture matches you? What kind of questions can you ask to see if you're a culture fit? I always ask, what kind of people succeed here? Can you describe the kind of people that do well here and why? I ask them, what are the core tenets, the core values at this company? What really matters? What is the walk that people walk around here? What kind of people don't do as well here? Ask these cultural questions. Usually when people leave companies, they leave because it's a lack of culture fit. So take this fourth characteristic, very important, okay? All right, so I've talked about 3 things I wish I knew at 28 that I know now. One of them is, don't worry about purpose too much early on. It'll evolve and you'll uncover it as you get skilled and do things. It'll become clear what you should be doing. So don't panic if you don't know right now. Just get good at something, and that is your career capital that you can leverage and negotiate with, okay? Secondly, get on the critical path if you can. When you join a company, you want to join a company in a department, in a function that is really important to them. When I say important, it drives sales and it really improves the customer experience. That's especially true if you want to become a general manager. And 3, do you want to slide down the brontosaurus? What stage of company fits who you are? So those are the big 3 that I wish I knew then. But wait, there's one more. Free of charge, I have one more thing I learned that I wish I would have known 1992, 1991 that I know now. And it's this. Don't worry about what people think of you. Because they don't think of you. I don't mean that to be harsh. I mean that people are worried about themselves. They're worried about their own career. They're worried about their mortgage. They're worried about their children. They're worried about, they're worried about their own factors. So they aren't watching us and thinking about us as much as we think they are. To me, when I realized that, it was actually liberating. It really made me think, don't do what's expected of me. People don't even care. Do what I want to do. Do what gives me energy. Do what I have passion for. When I realized that, folks, I actually stopped being a CEO and I became a venture capitalist and a teacher, because what I love doing is working with you. That's what brings me joy, much more than running a company. Don't worry if people think that isn't as fancy as being a CEO, because people aren't even thinking of me anyway. So, said another way. Next slide. Seneca said this. He was a Stoic philosopher 2,500 years ago. He said, away with the world's opinion of you. It's always unsettled and divided. Or if we want to take a little bit more jaded look at it, we can quote Andrew Carnegie, the philanthropist. He said they're thinking about themselves from breakfast, before breakfast, after breakfast, and right on until 10 minutes after midnight. They would be 1,000 times more concerned about a slight headache of their own than they would be about news of your death or mine. Now, maybe he's a little over the top here, right? But you get his point. And he was a great philanthropist, so I'm sure he had a heart of gold underneath all of this. I like to think of it like Thoreau said. If a man does not keep pace with his companion, perhaps it's because he hears a different drummer. Go your way. Do what brings you joy. Do what excites you. You'll do it well, and realize that most people don't care what we do, so do what matters to us. Okay, with that, I would just like to say, be safe, in these trying times. And we really hope we'll see you at Kellogg in the fall. Thank you very much for your time. Take care.